Hi, my name is Lyric, and today we are going to be doing another video by Clayton Crowley. I have not seen this one before, and it is The Legend of Kobe Bryant. Now, it's in two parts, so we're reacting to part one today, and both of them are really long, so that's why. Normally, when it becomes a multiple part video, sometimes I do them together, but no, not for this one. But The Legend of Kobe Bryant. Now, he did not do a Making the Case video on Kobe Bryant, but he has done a documentary on him, and I'm really hyped to see how he tells the story, because I think Clayton Crowley, what he's really good at in these NBA videos, is telling a story of a player and making you really understand everything that happened. So I think this will be really good. And yeah, let's go into The Legend of Kobe Bryant, part 1 of 2. Make sure I have a bunch of Kobe reactions up now, so go watch those if you want to see my reactions to those. And yeah, let's get into this. Hopefully I can ask them something.
The players that are remembered long after their playing days end, and indeed long after they too pass. The players that live on in mythology and reverence, that have influenced the game we see today. They are players who have set records, won championships, and captured our attention, etching their legacies into the
This gives me goosebumps already, man, this
game.
intro.
A legend is special, not simply because their talent set them apart,
Yow.
but because their stories transcend the individual. In fact, to me, that is what a legend is. A remarkable player who tells a story that enthralls us.
I'm hype, man, I'm hype.
I'd like to talk about the legend of Kobe Bryant.
Let's go, boys, let's go! I'm hype, man, I'm hype. Kobe Bryant.
The Black Mamba, Kobe Bean Bryant. Where do you start with one of the most polarizing, recognizable, famous basketball players of all time, who happens also to be one of its greatest? As enigmatic an athlete or person of interest as you are likely to find in the last 50 years of American pop culture. He was often a person that was difficult to describe, empathize with, or relate to. As his former teammate Brian Shaw said, Kobe sometimes isolated himself in his relentless pursuit to be the best who ever played the game. Bryant wore nearly every mask that can be worn. A winner, a loser, competitive, petty, selfish, unshakable, prodigy, flameout, idol, and pariah. Kobe spent every minute of his 20-year professional career with the Los Angeles Lakers, forging a legend that is one of the most interesting in
Him spending every year with the Lakers is especially impressive considering how much times he nearly got out.
Sports. As he was in most aspects, Kobe Bryant's upbringing was atypical. He spent his formative years from ages 6 to 13 in Italy, where his father, Joe Jellybean Bryant, played professionally after a 5-year stint in the NBA. There, Kobe became fluent in Italian as well as Spanish, acclimatized himself to Italian culture, and began falling in love with the game of basketball. When he did return to America with his family to Philadelphia at 13 years old, Bryant was faced with the same terrifying challenge that all teenage Americans must face: starting high school. But unlike most American teenagers, Bryant hadn't grown up in America. He had left his closest friends a continent away and had become so accustomed to the Italian language that he found it awkward to transition back to English, perplexed by American slang. He found it difficult to make friends.
I don't know about all
instead
this.
of going to parties, Kobe spent his weekends in the gym, honing his skills as a basketball player. He made the varsity roster as a freshman, but did more watching than playing, as the Lower Merion Aces went 4-20 on the season.
Yikes.
Still, his love of the game and confidence in his ability never wavered. He had the temperament of an obsessive, and in the face of the haunting loneliness of pubescent isolation, Kobe Bryant, like millions of other kids just like him, found solace in an empty gym watching leather go through nylon. When he returned for his sophomore season, Kobe Bryant was ready. That freshman team had gone 4-20. Over the next 3 years, Kobe led the Aces to a 77-13 record. By his senior year, Kobe Bryant was the #1 high school prospect in the nation. He took home a trove of National Player of the Year awards after passing Wilt Chamberlain to become Philadelphia's all-time high school leading scorer and
That's actually
leading the
insane.
Aces to their first state championship
Past
in over
Wilt?
50 years. Unlike other high school standouts from years prior, though, Kobe's senior year was not marked by a burning curiosity as to where he would go to college. The basketball world wondered if he would go to college.
Right, he didn't.
The year prior, in the 1995 NBA
Kevin
draft,
Garnett?
Kevin Garnett had declared his intention to forego college and make himself eligible to be drafted directly out of high school. And with the 5th overall pick, the Minnesota Timberwolves made Kevin Garnett the first basketball player in 20 years to be drafted right out of high school. The decision opened the floodgates. Obviously, as the top prospect in the nation, virtually every college in the country was vying for Bryant's commitment. But all of a sudden, there was the possibility that this 17-year-old kid could just say, forget it. I'm ready. This is my time. I'm going.
What is your guys' opinion on that? Do you think that players still to this day should be able to come to the NBA straight out of high school?
Pro. At a press conference in 1996, wearing some painfully 90s sunglasses atop his bald head, the Phenom did just that.
No, I have this.
How did my guy go from bald to not bald to bald again?
Skip college and take my talent to the NBA.
In the 1996 NBA draft, the Los Angeles Lakers were looking to free up cap space in order to land.
He's probably going to talk about this, but what I do know about the draft, he went down all the way to 13th, drafted by the Hornets, got traded on draft night to the Lakers for freaking Vlade Divac. But I also know the story of he trained with the Celtics, and there's a really cursed image of him in a Celtics uniform because when he was training with them. And also, he trained with the Clippers, and the Clippers said that they would not draft him because they'd look embarrassing to drafting a high school kid, even though they thought he was really good. And, that alone just summarizes the entire history of the Clippers right there.
The most physically dominant player basketball had seen since Wilt Chamberlain. One Shaquille O'Neal.
Wait, what?
Basketball had seen to free up cap space in order to land the most physically dominant player basketball had seen since Wilt Chamberlain. One Shaquille O'Neal. After 4 successful seasons with the Orlando Magic, Shaq wanted a new team in a bigger market. In order to free up the space needed to sign O'Neal, the Lakers made a draft day trade with the Charlotte Hornets, sending them center Vlade Divac and his behemoth contract in exchange for the 13th overall pick.
Yep.
Having impressed Lakers GM Jerry West during a pre-draft workout with that 13th pick, Kobe Bryant became the first guard ever drafted from high school into the NBA.
All-time great decision right there.
Player to
All-time
ever get
great
drafted
decision.
straight out of high school. He was so young at the time, just 17 years old.
I think he's gonna say he couldn't sign his rookie contract. He had to get his parents to sign it for him because he legally wasn't allowed to because he wasn't 18.
That his parents had to co-sign
Yeah,
his rookie
I knew this
contract.
one. Yeah, that's insane.
About 3 weeks later, on July 18th, 1996, the Lakers signed Shaquille O'Neal.
That might be the greatest offseason in NBA history, by the way. Getting Kobe and Shaq in one offseason. Obviously, it took a few years for that to work out. But, yeah, that might be the greatest offseason in NBA history.
Now possessing everything they would need to create what would be one of the defining basketball dynasties of the 21st century. In hindsight, of course, there aren't 12 players in NBA history that would be taken ahead of Kobe Bryant. But
Let
it was a
alone in
good
the
thing
draft,
that the draft shook out the way that it did. Kobe landed on the right team without the expectations to immediately make an impact that a number 1 pick would carry. He impressed in the Summer League, and when he debuted in the NBA on November 2nd, 1996, he was the second youngest NBA player in history at just 18 years and 72 days old.
Nuts. That man was 2 years older than me, bro. That's crazy
That
to
first
think
year,
about.
Kobe acclimated to the professional ranks and the culture and pressure that surrounds a team with championship aspirations. He came off of the bench for most of the year, spending most of his time dazzling crowds with his athleticism, even winning that year's dunk contest. Despite his growing popularity as a rising star on the most famous franchise in professional basketball, though, he was kept on a pretty short leash that first season, averaging just 15 minutes a game and earning a spot on the league's all-rookie second team. He had held his own.
Kobe is different from other like GOAT level greats, as that it took him a little bit to start off, obviously because he came out of high school, but like definitely took him a few years before he really became superstar
Proved
material.
wrong everyone who had doubted his ability to produce
greatly
and compete
improved.
in the NBA straight out of high school. But for the most part, in the big picture, Bryant's rookie season was kind of unremarkable. At least, it was. until the very last game of the Lakers season.
Oh shit.
In the playoffs, the Lakers met the Utah Jazz in the second round.
Oh right.
After 4 games, the
This
Jazz
is when he like 4 straight air balls.
had the Lakers on the ropes with a 3-1 series lead. In Game 5, a do-or-die game for the Lakers, in Utah, LA found themselves shorthanded after Byron
And this is worse because the Jazz went to the finals this year.
Scott missed the game with an
Obviously
injury.
lost, but
Robert Horry was ejected for fighting, and Shaquille O'Neal fouled out in the 4th quarter. Without their best player, in a win-or-go-home scenario in an increasingly close game, 18-year-old rookie Kobe Bryant put on his cape. Or at least, he tried to. He scored a team-high
Right.
9 points in the 4th, setting up a potential game-winning shot that he airballed. For all his life, Kobe had dreamed of being the guy to take the big shots. In overtime, he found himself in a nightmare. He went on to airball 3
that's
three-pointers
so wide
in the
open
period,
too.
2 of which came in the last minute and would have tied the game.
This
The
really
Lakers
helped
season
him
ended
realize how much he needed to work harder though, and it caused him to work so hard that his improvement
Did in
really like every year I think it was like a 5-year period at this time. Like every year he basically doubled in skill.
98-93 overtime loss, with Kobe registering 11 points on a putrid 4 of 14 shooting split. In the most important game of the season, with an opportunity that rarely presents itself to rookies, Kobe Bryant didn't just miss
That hurts someone,
one
no.
important shot. He airballed 4 of the biggest shots of the game.
Right.
All of a sudden, those doubters that he'd silenced in the regular season had reason to chirp. He's too immature. He needed to go to college. He needs an ego check. But at the same time, how about the balls on the kid? To come into the game as an 18-year-old rookie and never stop shooting, even when you're throwing up bricks? Sure, they lost, and he had something to do with it. But
Who was it that said something like, I forgot which player it was that said, I'd rather go 0 for 20 than 0 for 10 because 0 for 10 means you stopped shooting
still,
and you lost confidence
it
in
takes
yourself.
confidence. Which is exactly the kind of thing that makes Kobe Bryant so objectively great and still so bitterly polarizing. We'll dive more into his confidence and mindset later, but this game exists as a surreally perfect foreshadowing of the Kobe Bryant experience. For everything that he did that reaffirmed his greatness to his supporters, the same things would be pointed to by his detractors as evidence of his flaws. On the one hand, Kobe is wired like few others. He believes in himself above all else. He'll miss some game winners, maybe even shoot his team out of some games, but he'll make those game winners too. On the other hand, that confidence and self-determination can come at the detriment to the team. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to take a moment and thank the sponsor of this video, Factor.
Shout out Factor, but they're not giving me money, so I'll put my man's code up. Make sure to go to go.factor75.com/Clayton60. You can do that. Get 60% off. Use code Clayton60. But they're not giving me money. So
/Clayton60.
we'll
and
switch
use
that.
code Clayton60 to get 60% off
we'll
your
skip
first
that.
Factor box.
Oh, by the way, make sure to go watch the original video. I don't know if I said that already. Please watch the original video first. I'm not trying to take anything from Clayton Crowley here.
Over the next few years, Kobe's responsibilities steadily increased as he continued to sharpen his skills. In his second year, he was runner-up for the 6th Man of the Year award and became the youngest
Wow, I didn't know
all-star
that.
starter in history thanks to the league's fan voting.
Right.
And in his third year,
Not
he
because he
assumed
did
the role
it was an Andrew Wiggins fan, but in real here. He didn't deserve to be an all-star starter. That's insane. Imagine coming off the bench for your team. Imagine starting in the all-star game, but you don't start on your own team. That's crazy.
of the team's full-time starting shooting guard, starting all 50 games of the lockout-shortened 1999 season, averaged nearly 20 points a game, and was a third-team All-NBA selection. All the while, Kobe's improvement as an individual had a nearly linear relationship with the team's performance. Of course, at this time, Shaquille O'Neal was still the best player on the Lakers, and arguably the
Right.
best player in the sport. But
Right.
Kobe had quickly become one of the premier perimeter players in the world, giving the Lakers a 1-2 center guard combo that hadn't been seen since the days of Kareem and Magic Johnson.
Greatest 1-2 combo
Finally,
NBA history.
before the 1999-2000 NBA season, the final piece fell
Here's
into
everything.
place.
Here's where everything comes
The
together.
Lakers employed the talents of the man who would retire with more championship rings
Phil Jackson,
than
man.
any other coach in major North American sports. The Zen Master, Phil
Yeah.
Jackson. As his nickname implies, Jackson believed in a mindful, inclusive, holistic style of coaching, minimizing egos, encouraging cooperation, and often employing unorthodox methods to promote team synergy. The same principles he had used to guide Michael
Is Phil Jackson the greatest coach in NBA history?
Jordan and the Chicago
Your opinion on
Bulls
that below?
to 6 championships in 8 years. Armed with the best center in the league, one of the brightest new stars in the sport, and one of the most prolific coaches in NBA history, the new-look Lakers ripped off a 3-year stretch that stands among the best a basketball
Yeah.
team has ever enjoyed. The Lakers three-peated, winning the 2000, 2001, and 2002 championship.
So you see this right here with Kobe and Shaq and then Magic right here. This big three almost happened. Magic would not have been in his prime, and obviously Kobe would have been a rookie. Shaq would have been, I think, just before his prime. But still, all three of them on the same team. It would have been nuts because Magic came back. He retired in 91 due to HIV, but then he came back in 96. But then he retired again. For the last time, but in that offseason when they got Kobe and Shaq. So if he would have stayed one more season, they would have had Magic, Kobe, and Shaq on the same team. Obviously, they weren't Magic, Kobe, and Shaq yet, but well, Shaq maybe probably was pretty close too. But yeah, that would have been a pretty crazy what if.
And it's important to point out again that those 3 championship teams belonged to Shaq. They were his teams, and he was the Finals MVP in each championship series.
Yeah, he definitely was the best player in all 3 of the championship teams. But Kobe, don't think he was just carried, because Kobe had, maybe for 2000 you can say he was carried, but for 01 and 02 he was not carried. He was a very, very big part of the team. Like, he was legitimately the second superstar, a second superstar.
That because I know that this is Kobe's story, and it wouldn't be right to frame those titles as just his. But that's not to say that he didn't leave his mark on each championship, or that he wasn't vital to their success. Their first championship was perhaps their hardest. In the finals, Shaq was unstoppable. But true to form, Kobe made a mark in a truly memorable way. He had injured his ankle in Game 2, which had forced him to miss the rest of that game and all of Game 3. He returned in Game 4, tentatively easing himself into the action with a slow 6-point first half. But as the game progressed, an opportunity presented itself.
Oh yes, the
In an
overtime
exceptionally close
overtime
game throughout,
takeover when
he
Shaq
began
fell out.
heating up in the second half, keeping pace and finding his rhythm as the game came down to the wire and went into overtime. And there, in OT, after Shaq fouled out, Kobe Bryant put on the cape. Remember,
Put on the cape.
this
I
was
like
a
that.
pivotal Game 4. Win, and the Lakers go up 3-1. Lose, and the finals would be tied at 2-2.
Yeah, big game.
Without the best player in the league, Bryant submitted a heroic performance, nailing 4 of his 5 shots in the overtime period, with none more important than a tip-in off a missed shot with just 15 seconds remaining, giving the Lakers a 3-point lead. In total, Kobe scored 22 of his 28 points in the second half and overtime. He had come through on the biggest stage, had proven that he was the guy with the guts to take big shots and the talent to make them. A far cry from airballs in Utah. After the game and the subsequent championship, a comparison that had once sounded outlandish no longer seemed so far-fetched. That comparison, of course, is of Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. It had started years earlier, almost from the moment that Bryant stepped onto an NBA court for the very first time. Remember, Bryant became the Lakers' starting shooting guard the year after Jordan retired from the Bulls. Without the most popular basketball player ever, fans and journalists searched for the player that would fill...
Yeah, because right after Jordan retired, everyone was looking for the next Jordan, so they saw this athletic shooting guard who had, like, fadeaways and stuff, and just went, oh yeah, that's the next Jordan.
Gargantuan power vacuum. For years, the title of the next Jordan would be applied to dozens of young players.
Imagine being called the next Jordan and you still, like, somehow, like, live up to it. That's insane.
Players like Grant Hill,
The injuries.
Allen Iverson, LeBron James, Vince Carter, Ray Allen, and Jerry Stackhouse all, at one point or another, had their talents, tendencies, and attitudes compared to number 23,
Right.
all to varying degrees of accuracy and success. But none of them captured the real essence of Michael Jordan the way that Kobe Bryant did.
Right.
Sure, they played the same position and were roughly the same height and build, but their similarities go far beyond their physical traits. The two shared a quality that few, if any, players have been
Mamba
able
mentality.
to emulate in the 20
Mamba
plus
mentality,
years
man.
since the GOAT retired. Their drive.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan was a famously competitive individual who was never outworked, who never lost a contest of who wants it more. He was willing to do anything to win, and believed that only by applying the highest standard of excellence to himself and his teammates was it possible to achieve his goals. Could that sound any more like Kobe Bryant? Kobe's
Yeah.
confidence, even from his rookie year in the league,
Phil Jackson actually went on record to say Kobe Bryant was a harder worker than Michael Jordan, which is a pretty big thing to say. And he probably has the most. I believe him because he's the guy who probably has the most right to say that because he's the guy who worked with both Jordan and Kobe the most.
was rooted in the fact that he had spent the time and done the work that no one else had. He
Obviously, he didn't say Kobe was better than Jordan. He just said he worked harder. There's a big
was
difference there.
addicted to studying film,
You can work harder than someone and still somehow not live up to them just because you don't have the athleticism and stuff
experimenting with, tweaking, and adopting new moves.
or your skill.
He loved basketball as much
Natural
as nearly
skill.
anything else in his life, and tirelessly dedicated himself to becoming the best player that he could possibly be. Nearly every person whose career path intersected his
Has a story about
Kobe
him.
Bryant working out like a crazy person story.
Right.
And I haven't even mentioned
There's
the
so
fact
many of those
that
stories
Kobe
I've seen.
Bryant had an array of talents and moves that looked eerily similar to Mike's. One of Kobe's first
Mama's
loves
game after
was
him.
the pull-up jumper, a move that gave him mastery of the mid-range, going back to his high school days. In those younger
Mm-hmm.
years, he had world-class athleticism, a lightning-quick first step, and delivered some of the famous dunks and posters to ever be printed.
These dunks, man.
His jab step was absolutely lethal, and he developed moves and combinations in conjunction with it that always kept the defense guessing. He was a defensive pest as a youth and was a perennial defensive team selection. He was a complete basketball player with very few holes in his game. And maybe most importantly, Kobe had a supernatural gift of locking into and channeling
Clutch.
the moment, never allowing himself to be too far removed from it.
Yeah,
He
man.
lived for the big moments, relished the chances when the raucous roar of the crowd would fall on his deaf ears as his total concentration fixed into place on the task at hand. Now, who does that sound like?
Yeah, man.
I have an entire video dedicated to the 2001 Lakers and how great they were in the playoffs.
I've seen it.
Because they were great. In fact, it might well be the best postseason an NBA team has ever had. The combination of Kobe and Shaq was
Yeah.
apocryphal for other teams. Both players had always known that on any given night, one of them could go off for 40. But the power of that team
Which
came
is
from the
insane.
realization that when one got hot, it wasn't an invitation for the other to take the back seat. They averaged nearly 60 points combined in the playoffs. They went 15-1 through the playoffs, as close to a clean sweep as any team has ever gotten.
3 teams in NBA history have won the championship, only losing 1 game. It was the '83 Sixers, fo fo fo. Yeah, I'm not going fo fo fo. I'm going fo fi fo. And the 01 Lakers, obviously, and then 2017 Warriors.
They faced stiff competition, becoming just the second team in history to defeat 4 straight 50-win teams and
Nuts.
posted the highest net rating of any playoff team ever. And unlike the previous year, Kobe's contributions in the finals were almost just as impressive as his gargantuan teammates. His numbers reflected his newfound stature
Yeah, like 01 and 02, like he was like seriously. Like you could argue Shaq and Kobe were both like top 5 players in the world.
in the league as perhaps
Shaq
the
obviously
sport's
was,
best
but Kobe could
all-around
definitely be
player.
argued as like
And
up,
the
really up
totality
there.
of his contributions
Same.
just might be the best that a sidekick has ever produced
Quote,
in
unquote.
basketball history. And for the 2002 championship, Kobe played the role of assassin. He was a monster in the finals, accounting for 25% of the team's points and was at his absolute
Nuts.
best in the fourth quarters. As I say in the 0-1 Lakers video, Kobe never resigned to be Robin. Instead, he was the Batman.
I hate when people say that he was carried by Shaq. Like, bro, how do you score a quarter of the team's points and you're getting carried?
To Shaq's Superman. I mean, even in 03, when the Lakers had an underwhelming regular season and saw their title run end at the hand of the Spurs in the second round, Kobe emerged as a legit MVP candidate. It was the
Yeah, I think 03 was probably the first year that I think people were saying Kobe is actually better than
year
Shaq.
he arrived as an authentic every-night scorer and saw him begin to post the outlandish numbers that we would come to expect from him. He set the NBA record for most threes in a game against Seattle. He had a 9-game stretch of 40 or more points.
Nuts.
He averaged 40 points a game for the entire month of February.
Ridiculous.
And finished the season third in MVP voting. There's a reason it's so rare to three-peat. There's a reason that there's only one instance of a team winning 4 or more championships in a row. It's fucking hard. You're
Yeah,
playing
man.
every game of basketball possible, from September or October until June, year after year, getting every team's best shot at you. Not to mention the attention and pressure that comes with being such a talented team, combined with the fact that if you are a team that is good enough to win so many championships, odds are you have some egos and some characters in the locker room.
Yeah.
Those Lakers did something that has not been done in the nearly 2 decades since.
Yeah, no team's
Was it
three-peated.
Shaq's team? Yes. Would those Lakers have won 3 championships without Kobe Bean Bryant?
No. Absolutely
No
not.
chance.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
speaking
one.
of egos,
Maybe one.
I've yet to mention the facet
Not
of those
definitely not
Lakers
close to
that
3,
is
though.
nearly as memorable as their talent. The power struggle between Shaq and Kobe.
Right.
It is a famous beef, and the genesis of the beef, as far as I can tell, goes back to the 0-1 Lakers, when Shaq came into camp out of shape after just having had his best season ever, while Kobe grinded away in the gym all summer. Kobe wanted Shaq to work as hard as he did, and Shaq wanted Kobe.
Both sides of the beef make perfect sense from the person's perspective, because Kobe's perspective of I work super hard for everything to get anywhere in basketball, but this guy's the best player in the world. He has sat in his ass all summer and is coming into camp overweight. Of course, I'd be pissed. But also, looking at Shaq's perspective, I'm the best player in the world. I just won the championship, and I try to just relax for a few months before the season starts. And this kid, who's like what 20 years old at this point, like in his early 20s, is saying I'm not working hard enough when I'm the best player in the world who just led the team to a championship. Like, I can definitely see both sides of the story here.
Kobe to back off and respect the fact that the Lakers belonged to him. Of course, then you get snide attacks through the media, offhand comments that wound up in tabloids, and a general air of hostility and discomfort plaguing the team to different degrees at different times. Every time they were winning, things were simpatico. But when they lost, fingers got pointed, and everyone had an opinion on who was right, who was wrong, and whose team it should be. It was a Shakespearean conflict. These guys were so talented, and their styles complemented each other so well, but they were wired so differently.
Literally polar opposites
At
mentally.
the same time, they were both wired the
And so
same
gr- yet
in the
so
respect that they were both alpha dogs.
Yeah.
Which, of course, only caused more friction. And that was their relationship for most of their time together. Begrudging allies who doubled as a world-conquering duo. So after the three-peat, and after they finally fell off the mountain in 03, the question that needed answering was, can these two continue to coexist? Because the only way it seemed worth it for them is because they knew they were great together, and because they were winning championships. But
Yeah.
before that question could be answered, before the 2003-2004 NBA season, Kobe Bryant was arrested in Colorado in connection with a sexual
yeah.
assault investigation.
Yeah.
Charges were later dropped after the accuser refused to testify, and a civil suit was later settled out of court. Throughout the process, Kobe maintained his innocence and claimed that the relationship had been consensual. I have no interest in telling you what I think, nor am I here to grandstand and lecture you on what you should think, how
This
you
is a
should regard
basketball
Kobe's
video,
legacy,
yeah.
or anything like that. Whether the accusations were true or not, Kobe did afterwards become a more vocal advocate for women in women's sports, especially as he became a father to 4 daughters. Think what you want about it. This video is not about this incident, and I do not have a conclusion you should take away. But it would be wildly irresponsible to talk about the legend of Kobe Bryant and not spend at least some time talking about the facts of an incredibly serious accusation that sullied his reputation
100%,
and remains, in the most conservative language possible, a controversial point of contention.
Yeah.
So, with all of that having been said, the 2004 Lakers season was a mess. Because they were the team at the time, they'd attracted players who were desperate.
They were literally like, yeah, the Lakers have had 3 teams that are exactly like this team, because this is the season they Karl Malone and Gary Payton, but way past their prime. They did this 3 times. 2004 with Shaq, Kobe, Karl Malone, and Gary Payton. Then in 2013 they had Kobe, Dwight Howard, Steve Nash, and then in 2022 when they had LeBron, AD, and Westbrook, and they missed the play-in tournament. They're doing pretty well now. Okay, they at least made the playoffs this year once they traded Russ
to win a championship and escape the curse of eternal ringlessness, leading Karl Malone and Gary Payton to don the purple and gold. Kobe was missing games due to court appearances, and Shaq missed 15 games due to injury, while the arrest, the super team roster, and the escalating feud between superstars cast a pall over the entire endeavor. And the feud was at an all-time high. Before the season, Kobe had criticized Shaq in an ESPN interview.
Leaders don't beg for a contract extension and negotiate some 30 million plus per year deal in the media when we have 2 future Hall of Famers playing here pretty much for free.
Questioning his leadership and willingness to sacrifice. As the season progressed, this bitter resentment seemed to grow into what seemed like real hatred for one another. But of course, they found themselves in the finals yet again. Because they were the best 1-2 punch ever.
Right.
And because this time they got a little lucky. In those 2004 finals, the Lakers, with an absolutely star-studded roster of Hall of Famers and all-time role players,
lost to the
squared
Pistons
up against a Detroit Pistons team
with
that
no
were
superstars.
6-1 underdogs. The Pistons were a team of misfit toys.
The Pistons, I have to say, have to be the most unconventional championship team of all time. Like, literally, look at every single NBA championship in modern NBA history. Every single one of them has a superstar on it. Like, in the 80s, Lakers and Celtics, Bird and Magic and Kareem. The Sixers, Moses Malone and Julius Erving. The Pistons, Isaiah Thomas. Bulls, Michael Jordan. Rockets, Hakeem Olajuwon. Spurs, Tim Duncan. Lakers, Shaq and Kobe. The Heat, Dwayne Wade. Celtics, KG, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce. Mavs, Dirk. Heat, LeBron and D Wade. The Warriors, Curry and KD. Raptors, Kawhi. Lakers, LeBron and AD. Bucks, Giannis. And then just in the middle of that, you have the Detroit Pistons. Their best player, Chauncey Billups and Ben Wallace. Like, great players. Ben Wallace, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, but they're not superstar level players. They have no one in this team that made the NBA 75. I'm pretty sure they're the only championship team, at least in modern NBA history, that had no players in the NBA 75 list.
Players that did not fit the mold of superstars, that
Rashid.
had nonetheless come together, playing with the type of unity and selflessness that belong in a Disney movie. Only Ben Wallace was an all-in
Is there a movie about the 2004 Pistons? Because I feel like it'd be a really good movie.
selection, and he was a second teamer at that. A lot of people lost a lot of money when the Detroit Pistons won the 2004 NBA championship.
Yeah.
And make no mistake, the Pistons didn't just get lucky. They smoked the Lakers in 5 games.
5 games, yeah.
It's one of the great upsets of all time. Right up there with the
100%.
2011 Mavs and
Yeah. I have to celebrate the 2011 Mavs more to this day since we missed the
the
play-in
77
tournament.
Blazers. As time has gone on, the 04 Lakers have become something of a parable. Something that warns against the dangers of ego, selfishness,
Brooklyn Nets, looking at you.
divisiveness, a lack of chemistry, and star power thoughtlessly tossed together. In the following days, the Shaq and Kobe dynasty fell to bits. The castle had crumbled, and there was no putting it back together. Shaq had finally had enough and demanded a trade, landing on the Miami Heat. Gary Payton was traded to the Celtics. Karl Malone never played again.
Retired.
Point guard Derek Fisher left for the Golden State Warriors. and Phil
Wolf
Jackson
team.
retired after allegedly telling Lakers brass that he would
For
not
the time.
return
For the
if Kobe
time.
was still on the roster, which just left Kobe. At this point, he may well have
Yeah.
been the most reviled athlete in America. He had run
Damn.
Shaq, the best player on their 3 championship teams, out of town, driven the great Phil Jackson into retirement, and was still being accused of a heinous crime. And the cherry
yeah.
on top, not that there really needed to be one,
Very understandable to
was the
hate
fact
Kobe
that
at this
Kobe
time.
Bryant played horrifically in the finals.
Yeah, he did.
He'd put
to
up
be fair.
22 points a night, but on just 38% shooting from the field,
Yeah.
17% from 3,
Dylan Brooks.
and with over 3.5
Dylan
turnovers
Brooks type
per
beat.
game. He'd finally gotten what he'd always wanted. He was the alpha dog, the leader of the team.
Pistons
but only
defense, some of the
because
greatest
he was
defense of all time
last
that year.
man standing. And that's kind of what he evolved into. A cowboy, a gunslinger, the last man standing. He dropped a lot of his commercially appropriate image and just said fuck it. He had no one left but the person he trusted the most in the world,
Himself.
himself.
Yeah. Sick
During
line.
Kobe's first season as a solo artist, Phil released a book titled The Last Season, going into detail about the drama of the Lakers, and particularly the shortcomings of the uncoachable Kobe Bryant. Kobe, in turn, revealed that he had created an alternate identity for himself. The Black,
Mamba.
a
Yeah.
creature that, as Bryant described, can strike with 99% accuracy at maximum speed in rapid succession. Aside from the fact that he gave himself a nickname, the Black Mamba title seemed extra comical after Kobe shot 43% on the year and the Lakers finished with their worst record in over a decade,
Oh, yeah, 05
missing the
season
playoffs
was
for
terrible.
just the 5th time in franchise history. It was the first time that Kobe had been able to be the undisputed best player of the team, to put that team on his back and take full credit for the wins and full blame for the losses. And the Lakers stunk out loud. Which brings us to Kobe's 2006 season. Easily one of the strangest individual seasons a player has had in the last 30 years.
But one of the greatest. This is when he really breaks out. All this happened, and then he just goes God mode and becomes, like, and reaches absolute prime.
The weirdness started early, with a return to the sideline for none other than Phil Jackson.
Yeah, he's
That's
back.
right. Just 1 year after roasting Kobe as a player, and to
Pulled a-
some extent as a person,
He pulled a
Phil
Jordan.
took up the reins and again became the head coach.
Retired
of the Los
for
Angeles
one
Lakers.
season, then came back.
The results that first year were somewhat mixed. The
Whew.
team finished with a 45-37 record and qualified for the playoffs.
They were the
but
7th
it's the
seed.
way they got there that remains noteworthy. Despite the results of the year prior, and despite Phil's guidance in the triangle offense, Kobe doubled down. Hell, he tripled down on his warpath. He still wouldn't cede anything to a player he thought wasn't working hard enough. After all, why give the ball to someone who isn't as good and who doesn't work as hard? Kobe bet on himself and became a one-man army the likes of which had not been seen since the early days of Michael Jordan. I'm talking 35 points per game for the entire season,
Nuts.
becoming just the 5th player to ever top 35 and
Even way more nuts in this time than it would be if you average 35 points today. Averaging 35 points in 06 is nuts.
night. I'm talking
Way less
about
scoring.
a scoring average of 43.4 points for the entire month of January, the highest ever
my
for a
God.
player that isn't Wilt Chamberlain. That season saw the legions of Kobe Bryant fans start to say to the world, look at this. This is our guy. He gives it all every night and he does everything. He works his ass off, believes in himself over everything, and is unafraid of anything. Meanwhile, the rest of the basketball world entrenched itself into a totally different camp. They took up the banner that said that Kobe Bryant was a narcissistic ball hog who froze out his teammates and lacked the awareness or selflessness to include his teammates in all the ways that are necessary for winning. Nothing provided ammo for those two camps like his 2 most famous performances of the year. Perhaps
81.
2 of the most famous performances of his career.
60 and
In the
3/4.
first, Kobe Bryant scored
I'm not even mad about it,
62
even though
points
it's the Mavs.
in just the first 3 quarters against the Dallas Mavericks.
Nuts.
As a team through 3 quarters,
Even more impressive considering this is not a bad team. The Mavs literally made the finals this year.
Avs had scored 61 points. Yeah,
Insane.
Kobe had outscored the entire Mavs team by himself.
Insane. Insane.
And then, just a
81.
few weeks later, the Black Mamba submitted the second greatest scoring effort
If he had played the fourth quarter, he probably would have dropped 80. Let's be real here. Imagine he had two 80-point games in one season, bro. Oh my god.
in NBA history. On January 22nd, 2006, in a home game against the Toronto Raptors, Kobe Bryant scored 81 points. And make no mistake, this was not something that he did just for his ego
No. It was a close game. He needed to score this
or
many
just
points.
to set a record. The Lakers needed it from him. After a somehow pedestrian 26-point first half from Bryant, the Raptors still held a 14-point halftime lead. In the second half, through sheer will, focus, and talent, Kobe kept the Lakers in the game, nailing shot after shot after shot until they took the lead and eventually walked out of the building with a win. But of course, his detractors will point out the fact that he finished the night with just 2 assists. That was the kind of year Kobe Bryant had. He finished 4th in MVP voting, but had the second most first place votes. It was the first year where you either loved Kobe Bryant
Yeah.
or you hated Kobe Bryant, with no in between. And the weirdest
good
thing of
description,
that
yeah.
season still hadn't even happened.
The
In
playoffs.
the first round of the playoffs, the
Yeah,
Lakers
blew a
matched
3-1
up
lead
against the
and gave up in
Phoenix
Game
Suns
7.
and
Well, he didn't give up. He tried to prove a point that it's not my fault. He tried to get his teammates involved and to prove that his teammates were so ass because they didn't do jack
the winner
shit.
of the MVP award, Steve Nash. The Lakers took a 3-1 lead through the first 4 games of the series.
Had a great game winner this
with
series,
Kobe
though.
emphatically sealing a Game 4 win with
Yeah.
not 1, but 2 all-time clutch plays. And then, the Lakers blew it. The series went down to a 7th game, where Kobe had the most perplexing game of his career. A productive 23-point first half, followed by a 1-point second half. Kobe
Tried to-
Bryant took
tried to
just
prove a
3
point.
shots in the second half of the most important game of the season.
He was trying to
in the
prove a
midst
point.
of one of the great individual seasons ever. The same Kobe Bryant that scored 81 points in a game checked out and refused to shoot for whatever reason in what ended up
Oh my
being
God, I didn't realize it was the-
31-point
It was a
loss.
31
He was
point
called
blowout,
stupid
man.
and selfish by none other than the Los Angeles Times. And just to pour salt in the wound, do you know
Another
who won
shooting,
the championship in 2006?
And Shaq.
Miami Heat, led by a thrilling young shooting guard named Dwayne Wade,
Oh,
his
that's
partner in crime.
had to sting.
Shaquille O'Neal.
Had to sting.
It does not get weirder than that. After the season, Bryant decided to make a change. Whether it was to rehab his public image, to signal a change in personality, or just because he wanted to, Kobe Bryant changed his number before the 2006-2007 season
24.
from 8 to 24. For all the things that he had done wearing number 8. The three-peat, the drama, the scoring records, everything. It was the things he did wearing number 24 that cement Kobe Bryant as a legend.
And then we're getting into that in part 2. Yes, alright, so that was a fantastic part 1, going through everything in the first, 10 years of his career. Every controversy, everything that made people love him and hate him. And this was just fantastic, man. So stay tuned, make sure to subscribe so you get notified when I'm reacting to part 2, which we'll probably be doing next week. So, yeah. Bye.